Basically, the way this works is this. For an hour, hour and a half, we'll talk. I'll give a quick, brief rundown of what's going on in Harrisburg recently, what's coming up, and then just open it up for questions. And anything's fair game. Any question you'd like to ask, I'll try and answer. I'm not a big fan of webcasting. I have a face made for radio, but, so all you guys know, whenever you have a question, whenever we open it up for questions, please just raise your hand. And Jennifer over here, my staff, has a microphone. You have to speak into the microphone for it to be caught on our webcast. So please, if you have a question, just wait for Jen to get over to you with the microphone. And also, for those that are watching on the web, Lisa, do you have a microphone in the back? If Lisa can tell anybody that's watching on the web where they need to send their questions to, because we'll take questions over the web as well. So where would they need to send questions to, Lisa?
You can submit your questions via email to yourcalltownhall@gmail.com. It is not case sensitive. I just put the capital letters in there so it'd be easier to read. It is yourcalltownhall@gmail.com.
And we will take questions off the internet as well as live questions here throughout the evening. If there are any questions that we don't get to that are emailed in, I will certainly answer them myself in the next week. Okay, so let's just get started. What's going on in Harrisburg? The biggest thing that just happened in Harrisburg was the transportation funding bill. It just got passed a couple weeks ago. In this bill was $2.3 billion more for our roads and our bridges. Very important to have more money for our roads and bridges. I voted no. I voted no for a variety of reasons. First off, in order to get that $2.3 billion, we had to get the money from somewhere. I thought we needed more money for our roads and bridges. I just wasn't willing to put it on the taxpayers' back to carry that burden. The end result is, how they're going to fund this is there'll be a 28.5 cents a gallon tax increase at the pump. The tax is going to go to corporations, but I guarantee you the corporations, the oil corporations, will pass that on to you. So everybody will pay essentially 28.5 cents a gallon more over the next 3 years. I thought it was not a proper way of doing it. I thought there were other alternatives. When you buy a car, sales tax from your vehicle goes into the general fund in Pennsylvania. To me, that's natural. If you buy a car, that's transportation. That money should go to transportation. That's $1.2 billion a year. My preference was take the sales tax from vehicles and apply it to transportation. I also felt that we have our state police are in our transportation budget. It shouldn't be in our transportation budget. State police should stand on their own. Our state police right now actually patrol a lot of municipalities. None in my district. My district's all the taxpayers in my district pay for their own police force. But there are municipalities out here that have state police coverage that don't pay for it. So I think we need to take care of that way, get those municipalities using it to pay for it, and take the state police out of the transportation budget. The end result was the first vote for transportation failed. It went down by 1 vote. They re-voted it. It went down by 6 or 7 the second time. They voted it a third time, and they finally got it to pass. It's funny, if at first you don't succeed, try again. It was kind of frustrating for somebody voting no, but I eventually voted no 4 times on the transportation budget. One of my bigger issues in transportation, as well as where the money was coming from, is not all $2.3 billion goes to roads and bridges. We all know we need our roads and bridges taken care of. But $500 million annually of that $2.3 billion was going to mass transit. Now, I'm not here to argue whether mass transit should or should not be funded. We're funding it already. This is $500 million additional dollars towards mass transit. I don't think it's fair for my residents here in Penn Township, North Huntington, Irwin, and Jeanette to be paying to subsidize mass transit in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So it was another reason I voted no. That's the biggest thing. That is the law. You will be seeing it at the pumps probably near the middle of next year. It's unfortunate as far as I'm concerned, but that's the way it worked out. One thing I have realized is, I'll vote, I'll argue, but you don't win them all. This, unfortunately, is one I didn't win. Throughout the years, like I said, I had 8 town halls. Every single town hall I asked, do you want an increase at the pump to pay for roads and bridges? And the answer has always been overwhelmingly no. So I felt very confident I was not only voting my own opinion, but voting my district as well. So that's what happened recently. What's coming? Next week, believe it or not, we are voting to reduce the size of the legislature once again. We voted it last year and passed it out the House. It didn't come out of the Senate. We're attempting again to reduce the number of legislators from 203 down to 153. There's a separate bill that will reduce the size of the Senate from 50 to 38. I overwhelmingly support these bills. I'm hopeful that they will pass. But for all you kids in high school, here's your lesson for today. This is a constitutional change. This isn't just us making a new law, which means we vote on it, the House votes on it, the Senate votes on it, the governor signs it, and it's the law. That's what happened on transportation. This is a constitutional change. It's a change to the Pennsylvania Constitution, which you have a bunch of those now to pass out to all the kids. This is a constitutional change. A constitutional change just cannot be done by one vote. It has to be done 2 times, 2 separate legislative sessions. So we vote on it this year. Let's say we pass it. We would have to vote on it in a new session when new people get elected after next year's elections. If it gets passed twice, then it goes to a voter referendum, and everybody has a chance to say that they support it. So this is something that could happen, but you won't see it till 2020. I believe it's something that's pretty easy to do. 203 members I could see because they're trying to give constituent service, take care of all their constituent problems. That's a very easy thing for us nowadays because the technology increases. My staff, who are all here, will tell you they deal with phone calls, faxes, internet. They could send information back and forth so easily that they couldn't in the past. So representing 65,000 people like we do now, we easily can represent $80,000 to $90,000 without anybody feeling left out. So you'll see that in the papers next week. We'll be voting on that on Monday and Tuesday next week. Other things that will be coming up soon is there'll be a lot of discussion about the budget. Budget's due at the end of June. It's going to be a very difficult and very tight budget. We have an $893 million shortfall going into the year. That's projected just because of cost increases of what we already know. Majority of that is pension problems, which I'll talk about briefly. But the other side is if we have 2%, 3% increase in revenues, which is normal, that's in a $28 billion budget, a 2 or 3% increase is $750 million. So it may not be the end of the world. So we may not be looking at cuts. Hopefully that is not the case. The biggest problem we have with the $893 million shortfall is the pensions. What has happened is Pennsylvania's pensions for our state employees, our teachers, are $40 billion underfunded. This is not the fault of the teachers. This is not the fault of the state employees. This is actually the fault of the legislatures themselves because years ago they had voted for an increase and they never funded it properly. This pension plan was 110% funded in early 2000, and now it's 65% funded. That's money the state owes. It's the money the state has to come up with. There's a lot of different ideas on how to do it. There's 4 different plans out there right now. The one plan I'm supporting to start with, and I used the analogy that a legislator from Murraysville has about a boat, that we're in a boat that's taking on water, and we keep trying to bail out the water, but the boat has a hole in it, so more water keeps coming in. The pension plan's underfunded, more water keeps coming in, and we're just flipping them off the side and really not fixing it. The only way truly to fix it is to plug the hole in the boat. And the one way to plug the hole in the boat is to change the plans going forward. So the plan I support is switching new hires only over to a 401k plan, just like every other business has. That will plug the boat. Then we can talk about bailing it out. So those are the things that are coming up. Those are the big issues that are coming up. I'm going to open up the floor. Any questions or fair questions? Lisa, do you have something from the internet to start with?
Representative Dunbar, the citizens of Jeanette are very concerned about Montour Hospital. Can the state please, the citizens of Jeanette are very concerned about Montour Hospital. Can the state please step in and do something about this monstrosity?
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody's read about Montour Hospital. For those of you that don't know, Montour Hospital sits right up on Route 30 in Jeanette. The owners of Montour Hospital abandoned it. It's run down. It is a fire trap. It's a mess. It's 8 years now, and it's just a disaster waiting to happen. I've seen videos of it where there's actually inside Monsoor Hospital, there's open elevator shafts. I mean, seriously, open elevator shafts. You could walk in to an open elevator shaft. It's become a home for vagrants and homeless people. The process we have gone through at the state level is, first off, we had to identify who actually owned the building. And because of corporate protections and corporate veil protections, and the Monsoors actually not existing anymore and the corporation not existing anymore, it was hard to hold them accountable. So what we've gone through the process is to try and get free and clear title of the property. And we've done that through a judicial sale. And we're going to try and get either the county, Westmoreland County, or Jeanette to own the property. Once they own the property, then we can go and remediate the property, clean it up. Right now, they're undertaking securing the building, which is the most important thing to do right now, secure the building. The state has stepped in to help with that. It took a long time, I'll admit to that. It took a long time, but it is in the process of being done. The problem I've always had is it fair to use everybody's taxpayer dollars to clean up some corporate mess? And that's what we've been trying to do, is get this done without costing the taxpayers any dollars. There is a plan in place after the building is secured on remediating the building, getting funds to remediate the building, cleaning it up, and then reselling it and returning those monies to the Commonwealth if the Commonwealth expends any money. The idea, though, is we have to find a way to hold them accountable, and we're going through the legal end to try and hold the Monsoors accountable. Questions here? Yes.
Right here.
You got to wait for the microphone.
Yep. What's our county doing for the drug problem we have?
Okay.
Or the state,
the state,
county?
State.
The state.
Let's start with the state, because since that's where I am at.
Can I chime in
Well,
with
I wanted
Tina?
to get 'em going.
Yeah, with Tina. I'm on with Sage's Army on the Pennsylvania Overdose Prevention Action Network. I'm on their committee. And there's a couple bills that Tina's asking about that you're going to talk about. SB 1164 and HB 1194.
All right, HB 1194.
Why
which
is it stalled right now? It passed through the House.
Yeah,
but
HB
it's
1194, just so I can let everybody know, is a Prescription Drug Monitoring Act.
Correct.
Ooh, I got one right there.
Yes.
You have to understand when there's
It keeps physicians
3,000
from
bills out there to
overriding.
get the right number and know what it is an accomplishment. HB 1194 is a Prescription Drug Monitoring Act. And essentially what it is that we will monitor all the drugs that are being issued by pharmacists, doctors. So we have a database of information to find out who the bad players are in the system. You have to understand, everybody, there are doctors that are writing prescriptions, that their whole practice is writing prescriptions. And we need a database to be able to control that. HB 1194 passed the House about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
It's sitting in public health.
It's sitting in public health.
Why is it stalled?
Okay, a bill passes out of the House. After a bill passes the House, it goes to the Senate. Vice versa, if a bill passes out of the Senate, it comes to the House. It still has to go through the same process of going to committee, after a committee vote, then going to the floor. I can't answer what's going on in the Senate, why they haven't heard it yet. They have a pretty much an identical bill. Mm-hmm. And I think what they're going to do is decide which bill is going to be the vehicle. I'm fairly certain, if you know what the vote was overwhelmingly.
191 to 7.
Yeah, it was over 191 to 7, overwhelmingly in favor of this prescription drug monitoring program. The only issue I had, I voted yes, and the only issue I had was there was one part of the bill which gave police the ability to look at this database. My feeling was, all right, police may need that information, but they should still have to have a warrant in order to do that.
It still has to go through the Attorney General's office.
Yes.
So correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then SB 1164, the Good Samaritan law for somebody saving somebody's life.
Yeah, and there's a House bill that also is very similar to that.
Well, my question to that bill, though, is that there's 4 criteria you have to meet before you can make that phone call to save somebody's life. The law is still brought into the bill. And New Jersey and Delaware passed a bill that was clean, where you could save somebody's life and still not be I mean, if you have a warrant
so
for your
everybody
arrest.
understands, the Good Samaritan law, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read it recently, is if someone is having an overdose problem, a drug overdose problem, that if you call for help to save their life, you're pretty much indemnified of any charges or anything like that.
Immunity, yeah.
Yes.
Unless you have like a warrant for your arrest or
Yeah.
But
you're
the
a
attic
drug.
itself isn't protected in
The
the
attic's
bill.
not protected in the
attic is
bill.
not protected. They still get charged
Right.
after they
Yes.
overdose.
Yes.
And there's not
shouldn't be
there's
right.
not naloxone attached to the bill. So I would ask maybe that you would look at that bill in
Okay.
Jersey and Delaware's bill, because I work with David Humes from Delaware, who got the bill passed in Delaware, and he thinks this bill needs looked at to be cleaner.
Yeah. And I know for all our young adults in the room, this is a huge problem. I have a daughter your age. I have a younger daughter, still a 13-year-old, and I have two girls that are out of college now. But I know what goes on in these schools because, believe it or not, my kids do tell me. Thank God for that. I'm fortunate. But please, for all you kids going back to Norwin High School tomorrow, please, please, Sage's Army will be glad to talk with you about any problems that are out there. We have more drug overdose in Westmoreland County than at any time in our history.
I just went to a funeral today.
Yeah. Another question, Lisa. We're going to be bought back and forth between people here and the internet. Lisa.
For those of you at home, if you would like to submit your questions, you can submit them to yourcalltownhall@gmail.com. And the next question that we have is, Representative Dunbar, as Vice Chairman of the Gaming Oversight Committee, will there ever be internet gambling?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yes, I am the Vice Chairman of Gaming Oversight for Pennsylvania, at least in the House. There are recent laws passed in New Jersey, Delaware, and Nevada that allows internet gaming. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with it, but it used to be that you could play poker on the internet. New Jersey, Delaware, Nevada have passed laws enabling internet poker as well as internet casino play. What's going to happen is this, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is as New Jersey and Delaware start expanding their internet gaming, they just rolled it out last month, you will see a decline in some of the action in our casinos, especially those in Philadelphia. And when our revenues start declining, the normal reaction at the state is to secure those revenues. So I would not be surprised to see internet gaming here in Pennsylvania in the next couple years. It would not surprise me in the least. We could discuss all times about the evils of gambling and things like that, but revenues, once they start dropping, the actions will be taken in order to protect those revenues. Yes. Wait for the microphone. Thanks.
Representative Dunbar, thank you for doing this. I have a question in reference to your vote on Act 13.
Certainly.
I know that as a former township supervisor, you voted no.
Yes, I did.
And you have been active in following up on North Huntington residents' concerns about the pipelines that are going to take the gas that has been fracked
Yes.
through the state and sent globally, which, as I understand, is probably going to end the glut and raise our natural gas prices back to where they were. So I have two questions. What happened at the pipeline meeting that you had? And I have a little bone to pick with you because that was not a public meeting. That was by invitation.
Yes.
And also, as a former township supervisor, what would be your advice to the North Huntington Township supervisors who this evening have on their agenda whether or not to allow fracking in the two largest parks, Oak Hollow and Braddock Trails parks in North Huntington Township?
For everybody's edification, Act 13 was the Marcellus Shale bill that we passed about 2 years ago. I was one of the few Republicans that did vote no on that. What it does is it charges an impact fee for unconventional wells. I voted no. My major reason, as she said, I was a local township commissioner in Penn Township. I truly believe that local township officials should be able to determine their own zoning ordinances. Part of Act 13 was statewide ordinances that every local, they essentially lost the power to determine themselves whether they wanted this to take place in their own community or not. I voted no. The question as far as, first, the bone to pick, what she was referring to is Sunoco Logistics had proposed to run a pipeline to bring the wet gas portion of the gas that they extract in an unconventional well, like ethane, propane, through a pipeline. And their original proposal for the pipeline was to run right along the back of Markview Manor. Isn't there like a little park over there too on the other side of whatever that road is, Five Pines or something like that? It was supposed to pretty much run right up through the back of Markview Manor. Sunoco Logistics laid out the plan. They talked to me. We had a meeting here in North Huntington, a lot of residents, and we complained about the fact that you just took an aerial photo and you really didn't look at the density of how highly populated and how dense the population is in this area, that there are better alternatives. They did take a different alternative. They did listen to the residents of North Huntington and move that pipeline. Now it's over by your house, Ed. So, yeah. So, and it's actually by my house now too. Yeah.
And going through a golf course.
Yes.
And a state park.
And going through a state park right through the middle of Bushy Run Battlefield. So that's the new proposal. The meeting that you referred to that was invitation only was their meeting, not mine. I had nothing to do with that. And in fact, Lisa will tell you, I didn't get invited myself. And I kind of just showed up there regardless. But incident, we did get the invitation like 3 weeks after the meeting had happened. But we did eventually get the meeting where they showed where the plans were for that. This is going to take the byproducts of the Marcellus Shale drilling and transport it to the Mariner East pipeline from Houston, PA, right up here to Donegal, right off of Route 66. And then from there, it's going to get on the Mariner East pipeline and go all the way to Philadelphia, some for export. That is correct. So to answer the first question, no, I didn't have a meeting without you. We would certainly let you know if we did. The second question, as far as North Huntington Township commissioners, I'm not familiar with the parks nor the size of the parks and how you enter the 130, 140 acres. I'm not a big fan of, I support the industry. Don't get me wrong, I do support the Marcellus industry. I know that doesn't make you happy, but I'm honest. I support the industry. I don't know about putting it into our parks, so I just, I think the parks are there for a reason. And granted, once the drilling is done, it's still going to be there. It's not going to be as disruptive as when they're drilling. But when they're drilling, it's an all-encompassing thing, and there's a lot of vehicles going in and out. It's something I wouldn't support personally. But I would ask that the commissioners in North Huntington Township, if they're considering it, they make sure they know what they're getting into, and please to go and look at a site. If they need help, if they want help, I'll get them to a site. I'll take them to an active work site so they can actually see what it all entails. Okay? Certainly.
It's very heartening to see all these young people here.
Yes, it is.
I was at something called Power Shift in Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, where 7,000 young folks, mainly college students, were there to urge our shift to renewable energy and away from these dangerous extractive, extreme extraction that shale gas extraction is, and some of the other things. And as far as your future is concerned, what is protecting our groundwater when these fracking wells are drilled is cement.
Yes.
So some of these wells fail immediately, maybe is from 5 to 10%, maybe even higher. The casing fails immediately, and you've maybe heard of Dimmick in places where the groundwater was polluted. So sooner or later, your water, our water, is in jeopardy. And drilling is going on right now, 500 feet from the water source of many of you, Beaver Run Reservoir.
And has been for years. And just so everybody understands, Marcellus shale wells are encased in concrete. I don't know, what is it, like 3 feet? Is that, I think it's 3 feet is how much concrete's around it. I seriously believe that no one wants to jeopardize our drinking water. No one wants to take that risk. That these processes have been determined to be safe. Anything we do, there is a possibility. I'm not going to deny that. Anything we do, there is a possibility for failure. But I believe all precautions have been taken. Lisa, do you have a question?
For those of you watching at home, you can submit any questions that you have for George to yourcalltownhall@gmail.com. And our next question comes from Ridge Road in Jeanette. Dear George, I recently received a postcard from a different legislator welcoming me to his district. I thought you were my representative. How am I supposed to know?
Well, in Ridge Road in Jeanette, I am still your representative. What happened is this. Every 10 years, they redistrict. So everybody represents the same amount of people. So let's say we would have explosive growth here, and I would no longer be representing 62,500 people, that I all of a sudden was representing 70,000 people, and somebody else was only representing 50,000 people. The idea is we're all supposed to represent the same amount of people. So every 10 years, they kind of reshuffle the deck and have the same, and they change the lines, essentially. What had happened in redistricting is I lose the city of Jeanette. I pick up a couple wards in North Huntington that I didn't have. I pick up Trafford Borough and Manor Borough, which I didn't have in the past, which essentially gives me the whole entire Norwin School District and the whole entire Penn Trafford School District. What had happened is the representative who I kind of traded off with sent out mailers to everybody to say that, look, I'm your new representative, and actually he just used a bad mailing list, to be honest. He just used bad information. So anybody out there who's watching, I still represent you if you live off of Ridge Road. We're trying to track down exactly how many of those went out. I'm looking forward to representing Trafford, Manor, and the parts of North Huntington I don't have. I do feel bad losing Jeanette. I've worked very hard in Jeanette, worked very hard with Monsoor Hospital, very hard with the Legion there, very hard with Jeanette Memorial Hospital, trying to get that onto a new buyer. And I felt like we've made a lot of headway in Jeanette, and it's unfortunate I will be losing them. I still represent everybody from Jeanette until the end of this year, end of next year, until my term expires, which will be December 1st of next year. I still represent all those people. That doesn't change. And going forward, even those people that I will be picking up, feel free to come and see me. We'll be glad to take care of anybody. Question here? Yes, in the back. Can you just wait till the microphone?
Okay.
Thank
Yesterday I went with a representative from Washington County to the Governor's Palace and the
Yes.
Capitol, and we had a tour of all the parts of the legislation, or whatever you call it. And they were in session. They were voting.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, nothing was,
Nothing earth-shattering
nothing
yesterday night.
passed, no.
Yeah.
And how do you know what's even being presented
Yeah. So you were
if
saying...
you're not there?
Yeah, well, actually, if you're not there, if you're not on the House floor, the House floor rules are very specific. You have got to be on the House floor to vote.
Well, we weren't allowed in until after the voting was.
Yeah. You
so
have
we
to be
didn't-
on the House floor to vote. And if you've been to the Capitol, and I invite everybody to come up and see me anytime you like, we'll certainly, you want to bring your class up, that'd be great too.
Yeah, I met Representative, 3 or 4 other representatives from different areas.
Really?
Yes.
Well, normally there were quite a few representatives yesterday that were on leave, and when you're on leave, there's big scoreboards on. I call them scoreboards. There's two big boards on the wall of the House, on either side of the House, with everybody's name listed on it. And when you vote yes, your name turns green. When you vote no, your name turns red. And if you're absent, it stays this burnt orange type of color. But if you're absent, it has a little E by your name, which means you're excused. And they announce it on the House floor, those representatives that are not there. They do announce it. So hopefully those representatives that were not there had an E beside their name, because you really cannot vote unless you're there.
Well, then if they're not there, how can you pass anything?
All you need is you just need the 102 votes to be the majority.
I see.
There's 203 members. If you have 102 votes, things could pass, 102 to 50. If there's never more than 5 or 6 people absent, it's very rare. But and so you were at the governor's mansion?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I've never been there. So
Everything's decorated. Everything's
things.
decorated for Christmas. Oh, it's quite lovely.
Yeah, I did get a
tour.
Christmas card from it. It was very nice. But
They're also doing something very nice there when you go through. They have a place where you can pick up a Christmas card and you put your name on it and maybe a message, and then it's sent to a serviceman.
very nice.
I was impressed by that.
That's very nice. Thank you. Lisa, do you have a question?
Dear George,
Use the microphone, Lisa.
Dear
Come on.
George, I have Highmark Insurance and UPMC doctors. How can the state let these people fight over money when my health is in jeopardy?
Good question. I knew we'd get to it sooner or later. Has anybody here not heard about Highmark UPMC battle? Yeah, come on, Ed. I know you have. Anyways, what's going on is this. UPMC used to be the hospital provider, the provider. Highmark was the insurer. They provided the insurance. What's happened is UPMC started in the insurance business as well. Highmark decided they were going to get into the provider network and start buying hospitals. Now they have direct competition with each other over everything, and they're fighting, and it's littering our TV with all these lovely commercials. If you haven't seen one, you just aren't watching TV, which is probably a good thing, to tell you the truth. But what they're fighting over is this. They're fighting over control of who dictates to whom. A hospital provides care, the insurance company pays them what they feel is the right amount for that care. UPMC doesn't want Highmark dictating to them. UPMC doesn't want Highmark having that much power to dictate to them cost, and vice versa. And they don't want them competing with them on the hospital front. Highmark doesn't want UPMC selling insurance. My problem is this. They're both not-for-profits. They're a charity. Their whole thing should be taking care of people. And it shouldn't be about profits, and it should not be about who has control over whom. Just take care of the people. I am a strong fiscal conservative. I am also a free market system guy. I believe in letting the free market system dictate what happens. But free market rules does not apply to charities. It does not. They're not competing with each other. You're trying to do something good for the public. So there shouldn't be competition there. I've met with UPMC. I actually met with them Monday night. I meet with Highmark. I met with UPMC several times, and I've told them all the same thing. I don't want to interfere. I don't want to dictate to you guys how to do your business, but you got to get something done here. You got to get an agreement done. I have so many of my residents that have Highmark insurance and UPMC doctors and are scared to death of what's going to happen, or vice versa. I also have concerns about what happens to community hospitals. What happens to Excella? Do they just get steamrolled in this process, or what? It's a scary thought. So all I've asked them is reach an agreement, reach an agreement. Their agreement expires at the end of 2014. Right now, it doesn't look well. Right now, it doesn't even look like they'll even sit in the same room together, let alone reach an agreement. I, as a legislator, can't do anything right now. It's up to them. I asked them to try and reach an agreement, but if they don't, there are bills out there to do it. There are 2 bills out there that are bipartisan, They're introduced by Representative Christiana from Beaver, who's a Republican, and Representative Frankel from Allegheny County, who's a Democrat. They've worked together. I think they're 1621 and 1622. And essentially these bills say, look, reach an agreement. But if you don't, we're going to make you reach an agreement. And if you don't reach an agreement, go to arbitration and figure it out. And, you know, and the hammer we do have to hold over them is their tax exempt status. Get this done. You're a charity. Take care of the people. Questions here? Let's get a couple other.
We're all kind of together on the drug issue.
I know. I'm just trying to get different topics. Do the kids have a question?
Many topics on that.
Lisa?
For those of you watching at home, you can submit your questions to yourcalltownhall@gmail.com. And this question just arrived. It says, you were just talking about the free market. Pennsylvania is one of only 2 states where we can't buy alcohol at the grocery store. Republicans own the House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion. Why can't we buy beer at the grocery store?
Thanks for the question. Own is a strong word.
It sure is.
Own is a very strong word. The House has passed liquor privatization. The House has passed that legislation. It is sitting in the Senate waiting for action. I'm hopeful that the Senate does take it up and do something with it. I believe that we have no business being in the liquor business. We have absolutely no business at all being in the liquor business. When you are also not only selling it, but you're also regulating it, setting up the rules, it's just, something just doesn't work for me there. Pennsylvania, unfortunately, also loses a lot of money to neighboring states through border bleed. Border bleed is when you live in a surrounding, an area right near a border, and you run across the border because you can get something cheaper. Alcohol is the one thing that we lose a lot of revenue on. And believe me, we tax alcohol. There's regular sales tax, and there's a 17% Johnstown flood tax on top of it on all alcohol. If you go down near Maryland, Delaware, everybody there from Pennsylvania goes across the border to shop. The #1 grossing liquor store in the country, in the whole country, the #1 grossing liquor store, the one store that sells more liquor than any place else, is in Delaware. Not many people live in Delaware. I mean, there are a lot of Pennsylvania people going over there to get stuff cheaper. So, I mean, we need to change that process. We need to open it up for competition. It should result in lower prices for Pennsylvanians. It certainly will result in more tax dollars for Pennsylvanians. I voted for it. I support it. I'm hoping the Senate will take it up as well. Okay, questions here? Jen, she has one up.
Well, we have like a 2-part question. It's all about the drug issue we have in our state, in our county. We have several issues. We have a DRC program. It's a federal grant, and it's state funded, and it does not work in our county. I don't know about anywhere else if they have it. But in Westmoreland County, it's called a daily reporting center, and it's a horrible program. It just doesn't work. We don't have a drug court in our county. There's only
We don't have a
one
rehab center in our county.
We
either.
went-
We don't
and
have a
they-
rehab.
and we don't have a
rehab. Detox.
There's one, would you say Luzerne County?
Luzerne, there's a model in Luzerne they
There's
want
a
us to
model
look at.
to look at, but nobody's doing anything. Are they talking about this at the state? What's going on? Because I don't know if anybody's aware, I'm sure all you students in here have lost somebody or know somebody that's died of a heroin overdose or prescription pills. And what we're trying to do is trying to save some lives. Addiction is a brain disease. It's not, people go, they choose to use. No, because we all choose to drink too. You don't know you're going to be an alcoholic until you do. So what we want is we want a drug court. You can't throw an addict in jail and then just say, stop using drugs. It's like telling a smoker, we're going to take cigarettes away, now you got to stop smoking. It's hard to do.
Is there drug courts in other counties?
Just
Yes,
Luzerne.
Because I'm not aware of any that are.
In other counties there are, but we have 3 judges that are leaving off of our courts, which will leave, I think it said 33,000 cases
Yeah, and,
left
and
open.
in response to that, there are 3 judges that are expected to leave
Correct.
shortly. I've already had discussions with the governor's office
That's-
about the need to appoint somebody.
We absolutely have to have.
And I've already had discussions with the governor's
Yeah.
office about that. I'm well aware of that. The caseload will just, it will overwhelm them.
Well,
It
we
will
already
overwhelm
have
them.
Judge Pesley off of the court right
And
now.
Blahovic, I think, is done this
He's
week.
done, he was done yesterday, I
Yeah.
believe. So, and we have Judge Bell leaving, so we have, and Judge Bell sees most of the cases for
Mm-hmm.
criminal cases and like heroin addiction. So.
And I
we-
know myself and Senator Ward have both spoken to the governor about this. He is aware. I'm hoping that
Okay.
he will appoint somebody there.
Are
Okay.
they talking about drug court, though?
I have not heard any discussions, but to tell you the truth, I really don't know much about it. I really haven't seen. I'll be glad to look into that.
Dirk Mattson.
I know Dirk very well,
Dirk,
yes.
Dirk is working on grants and money for that for us, but, you know, I spoke with, Paul Kuntz, and Mr. Kuntz said that it's gonna be hard to have the drug court without those appointments.
Understood.
So we would ask of you to at least approach
And I
Governor
appreciate that, I do.
Corbett.
I mean, I do.
Okay.
And I would like to look at Luzerne County's information to see.
We were gonna go there, a couple of us, just to bring the model back to Dirk. We
Yeah.
may do that.
Okay, very good.
And with that DRC program, because
It's
it is,
something that needs looked
it needs looked at. It doesn't work. It's almost, I mean, the initials DRC for Daily Reporting Center are direct route to county. Because once you go to jail, you go there, you go back to jail. It's a vicious cycle.
Costing the taxpayers
It's
a
costing
lot.
a fortune, and nothing's happening. You put a bunch of addicts in a room with a bunch of people they use drugs with. You talk about drugs all day long. You do not allow them to have jobs because they have to be there 5 days a week. And what do you think happens when they leave there? They've just made a whole bunch of new friends. And I mean, it was just investigated.
They're also trading urine, so they get a
Right.
clean urine test.
I mean, it's kind of a way, it's like they're throwaways, you know? We can't keep putting them in jail, so we'll put them in this. Let's get them some help in this county. Drug court will work. There's a judge in Florida, I can't think of what her name is offhand, but she's got a wonderful drug case down in court in Tampa. It's another one to look into. It's all over the internet. So we just want to make sure that the state is looking into this, the county, and that everybody's aware.
And
We're losing a generation of kids.
I'm not going to argue with that. And having children of my own, it's a
Right, you
great
know.
concern. Yes.
Thanks.
Other question? Thank you. She gets extra credit for asking the question. Just so you know that. Give her extra 10 points tomorrow. Yeah, good luck with her.
Hi.
Hi. I just got you extra credit, just so you know.
Yeah. I live within this district, but I do a lot with PFLAG Greensburg, which is Parents, Friends, Lesbians, and Gays. And
Yes.
I was just wondering, with a lot of states recently legalizing same-sex marriage and putting legislation in place to protect those people, how close do you think that Pennsylvania is to legalizing same-sex marriage? And do you think that there will be any legislation put in place to protect people like that teacher that was recently fired?
Yes, that's a great question.
And where do you vote on that?
That's a great question. You get a gold star on top of your extra bonus points that I've already negotiated for you. Pennsylvania has a law, which I'm sure you're aware. Pennsylvania has a law that marriage is between a man and a woman. That is the way the law is written in Pennsylvania. So in effect, it does not recognize same-sex marriages. I'm old school Catholic. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. But it's a terminology thing with me. It's a terminology thing where civil unions, is that marriage? Is that not marriage? I don't know. There shouldn't be any discrimination because of sexual preference. I go back, this is off the top of my head, so I go back to when I was your age in I won't finish the rest. But my best friend, who I grew up with, who I'm going to have to get him to watch this because he's down in Florida, but my best friend I grew up with, Woody, my next door neighbor, my dearest friend in the world, best man at my wedding, and I was best man at his wedding. And we just grew up together, we're brothers. He's black, his girlfriend was white. And in those days, that was sacrilegious. That was, you had to hide. And in order for Woody and his girlfriend to hide, she would bring her best friend and he would bring me along so we would give them cover. The ironic thing is, I'm married to that girl now. that his girlfriend used to bring along. So things work out in strange ways, don't they? These things were so frowned upon in the 70s that are now just socially normal and acceptable. My daughter's boyfriend is an exchange student from Cameroon. I mean, these are issues that we've way put behind us. Hopefully, as a society we have. Maybe we'll reach that point also in this situation. But me, in all honesty, marriage is between a man and a woman. If we're talking about civil unions, I would certainly be able to talk about. I have no problem with the anti-discrimination stuff that's out there. Pennsylvania, it's a very hard sell. It's a very hard sell. It's a very conservative state. Very conservative state but I think as time goes by, and my point referencing my childhood is, as time goes by, I think attitudes change a great deal on these things. I don't believe my job is to legislate what goes on in someone's private life. I really don't. I think I'm there for other reasons. My background in business and everything like that, that's what I tend to focus on. The social issues, yes, I know they're very important, but it's not something that I focus a great deal on. I know it's being talked about in Pennsylvania. There's a lawsuit that the ACLU filed against Pennsylvania about the marriages between a man and a woman law, saying it's unconstitutional. That's being challenged in court right now. So I think as we see fallout from that, you may see some legislation arise from that. Thank you for the question. Yes, in the back.
Has there been anything else introduced in concerning the gun laws in Pennsylvania?
There are numerous gun laws from both sides. Those looking for more protection, more Second Amendment right protections, and those looking for more thorough background checks and things like that from both sides. My understanding is none of these bills are moving forward relatively quickly. I think a lot of it has to do, there are different initiatives going on, but no real legislation. For instance, in response to Connecticut, there is a Safe Schools initiative going on. There was a task force, I would want to say, that came out just a couple weeks ago with a laundry list of items in securing our schools and making them a safer environment. And part of that also was grant money to help these schools undertake these suggestions. So, I mean, there's been things moving along in that area, but no real legislation moving as far as gun.
Who would the responsibility fall on to try to get the sales of guns over the internet? You don't have to show anything. You just order it and they sent it to you, is my understanding.
You still need to have license in Pennsylvania to order to get a gun.
I thought you could get them without a license over the internet.
I would have to check. I don't believe that's the case.
That's
but
what I
would
was
like,
understood on the,
yeah.
on the news. And
Lisa?
I'd like to say, too, that our Representative does get back to you if you questioned him.
Yes, she does. I
Raised
tried
a question to him. He did
I
get
tried.
back to me
And
afterwards.
for everybody's edification, if you have questions once you go back home or go to school, I try and answer. I do try and answer. If there's a question involved, I try and answer. Go ahead, Lisa.
Dear Representative Dunbar, thank you for putting this town hall online. With all these different questions about these difficult issues, your job looks really hard. What is the most important thing that you learned since you've been a legislator?
Was that my daughter that sent that question? Kissing up to me.
I don't know her email address. What is
Yeah,
it?
no, she's at work, actually. What was the most important thing I learned? I tell you what, the biggest adjustment for me when I got to Harrisburg was understanding that because somebody is a Democrat or Republican, that and they have a different view than you do, that doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong or they're right. I mean, the biggest adjustment I had was people just assuming because of your party affiliation that somehow you believed in certain things without ever talking to you or wanting to find out more about you. Once I got to Harrisburg, the learning curve for me was to also understand what my caucus members in the Republican Party, all Republicans aren't created equal, was trying to figure out what would motivate somebody to say something that I would think was not Republican. But it may be that their district. Pennsylvania is a very diverse state. Southeastern Republicans are quite different than Westmoreland County Republicans, and we have different views. Along the same lines, going across the aisle and working with the Democrats, you can't just assume that their opinions are wrong. That was a big learning curve for me, is just hearing the other side and hearing the other argument and realizing that just because their opinion is different doesn't make them wrong. I mean, you could argue about it and discuss it, but just not jumping to the conclusion that just because it comes from the other side of the aisle that it's something that's, shouldn't even be considered. And I think part of that process is what leads to what we have in D.C., is we have such partisanship. Such like, if it's not a Republican idea, it's no good, or if it's not a Democratic idea and you're Democrat, it's no good. And we've failed to reach across the aisle. And we do that in Harrisburg as well. So it's a big learning curve, just trying to have discussions back and forth without being so polarized. And we have that issue in Harrisburg just like D.C., and it's something we all need to work on. Yes? We have to wait for the microphone. You caught Jen when she was in the back of the room.
Should have been wandering a little bit more. Can't get there.
I actually have a few things that I want to say. One was in reference to the Good Samaritan Act that should be passed, but I don't understand why somebody can possibly get in trouble for saving somebody's life, but the dealer takes their life and nothing gets done about it. If you can leave a bar and you're drunk and kill somebody, you get charged with vehicular homicide or vehicular manslaughter or whatever it could be, but a drug dealer doesn't get charged. In my opinion, and this is very personal for me because my brother died of an overdose a year ago, nothing was ever done to his dealer. And I know that he has also sold to other people that have overdosed and died from this same person. In my opinion, it's no different than giving somebody the bullet to their unloaded gun.
And I won't disagree with you, but what I will say is this: as a legislator, what we can do is strengthen the laws, strengthen the laws, strengthen the laws.
Well, the one,
And
with her question, just so while you're answering this, we have actually talked to the detectives about turning names in. Nothing's happening. Like, if we're giving this information, we're telling you addresses, giving you phone numbers, why aren't they going after the dealers? We don't understand.
You're not working across the border.
Yeah, they're not, Allegheny's not working with Westmoreland.
We need,
Okay.
possibly.
See, now that's something I can take back to
I knew
Harrisburg.
you could. So, Mr. Peck, we have not met with Mr. Peck yet, but he needs to know, because I know that he's dealing with kids that are working with them, and they've been told that they will not work with anybody that we know is in Allegheny County, but in fact, you're aware of this, that the drugs are coming from Allegheny County
I'm
to our
certainly aware
county.
of
Drugs
that.
are crossing the border.
They're crossing the border.
In turn, going after them, they're not.
Yeah.
We need to work with Allegheny County in some way.
Okay,
so,
very good. That is something I can take back to Harrisburg.
Okay.
Yes, you have a question right back there. I want to get the high school kids.
Hello, Representative Dunbar. Thank
Hi.
you for doing this. And I know this question might not sit well with the ladies up front, but when you talk about trying to get sources of revenue and you talk about trying to get out of people's lives, and I know that this question will get us into a debate of national versus state and local, but is there any, what is your stance, and is there any legislation going on about the legalization of either marijuana outright or at least medical marijuana in the state of Pennsylvania?
Certainly, that's a very fair question. There is legislation in Pennsylvania for medical marijuana. It was introduced by Senator Leach, I believe, and I believe the House version was introduced by Representative Cohen from Philadelphia. I have read those bills relatively thoroughly. They do establish, what's it called, a care center, I believe is what it's called. and everything would be channeled through the care center for the medical marijuana part, where they would actually grow it, sell it. Everything would be capsulized into one environment, so there wouldn't be any revenue benefit for Pennsylvania, because it would be a nonprofit organization. Whatever it costs to raise the plants and grow them and sell them is what it would be charged. So there's not a revenue portion that's available for Pennsylvania on the medicinal side. I haven't seen any legislation. There may be out there, but I haven't read it. I haven't read every bill unless it's moving through. I haven't seen one as far as just legalizing it completely, which I know will never fly in Pennsylvania. I could be honest with you. So even if it was introduced, I probably wouldn't even pay much attention until it got through a committee process. But, and I'm not an expert in this field. I think that maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. But I don't know really what's the difference between medicinal marijuana and Marinol, which is a oral drug you take. Why would you need marijuana that you can smoke versus a pill? I don't know if there's a difference or not, because I know Marinol is something that you can get a prescription for. Myself, until a bill like that actually comes to the floor and starts getting amended, I would always hold judgment. Right now, it would definitely be a no vote on it. So, Lisa, do you have any more questions? Because we're winding down here in a few minutes. So.
I just have one last question, and it is, dear Representative Dunbar, I read that the state wants to ban body fragrances like Axe from our schools. Does this mean that we'll have to use fragrance-free deodorant and shampoo and everything? How can the state do this?
That's a great question, and it's a great question. And Representative Hahn, Marcia Hahn, introduced that legislation, and Marcia's a very good friend of mine. She sits directly behind me on the House floor, and I could tell you she does not wear perfume. So. I'm going to show her this. I will show her this tape. She'll laugh, trust me. Marcia's a sweetheart. She is an absolute sweetheart. She introduced this legislation for a constituent that came to her with a problem. A lot of time constituents come to us with problems. And the idea wasn't to pass a law. The idea was to raise awareness. So she introduced the law to simply raise awareness within her school district where there's a problem. I don't know exactly what the problem was, because I was kind of teasing her about it. What's this about? You know, and it was to raise awareness within her district. It's not going to be a law. It's not going to move forward. There's people here today that have come to me with problems. John's come to me with problems, and I've gone and worked on different things. When your constituent comes to you and you agree, you try and find some way to move the process along. This was Marcia's way of trying to move the process along, way in the back.
We actually have a policy like that now.
You have a, really? You guys have a policy in Norwin that you can't wear Axe?
No, the policies we can't use certain fragrance cleaners and things like that.
Wow. You can't use aerosols. Who's going to enforce that? How are they going to be able to enforce that? I wonder. They have aerosol police running around. Yeah. Right next to Lindsay, Jen. Oh, I'm sorry. You got it.
Well, that last person took my question. So, over the summer, the NSA became apparent to the public, where just basically government surveillance. I'm sure you're aware of this.
Yes.
They're tapping your phones, looking in your
Yes.
inbox, et cetera,
Yes.
et cetera. What do you think about this?
We sent out of the state government committee in the House, which I'm a member of. We had sent a resolution urging Congress to really evaluate exactly what the NSA is doing. We don't have much power over the federal government. We have probably very little power over the federal government, to be honest with you. But what we can do is we as a group of legislators can either write a letter on our own or pass a resolution urging Congress to look at something like this. So we did pass a resolution urging Congress to look at what the NSA is doing and actually study it and issue it a report. Give us something that we can, because we're to a point now where do you believe whatever they tell you? And I mean, it's kind of scary. It's like they have all this information on you. what are you utilizing it for? You know, and I believe the girl on the other side of Lindsay had a question as well.
I'm sure most of the high schoolers are a little curious about this, but where exactly do you stand on raising minimum wage?
Raising minimum wage. That's a great question. There is legislation out there to raise minimum wage that Representative Kim from Harrisburg has introduced. I believe there's someone in the Senate has introduced it as well. You're going to have to help me. What is minimum wage right now? That's sad that I don't.
$7.25.
$7.25. There is pros and cons to raising the minimum wage. When I heard 11, did I hear that somewhere? $11, $15 an hour. I've heard different rumors out there everywhere. That would decimate our economy. I mean, it would be more money in the younger kids' pockets, but at the same time, that Happy Meal is going to cost a heck of a lot more by the time it's all said and done. Realistically, Pennsylvania minimum wage hasn't increased. I don't know the exact time frame. It's been quite a while. So some type of indexer, some type of cost of living indexer, I would be willing to look at. But the legislation and stuff I've seen has all been blow up the economy type numbers. It just won't work. Understand, before I did a lot of things, I ran restaurants. When I was your age, I worked in restaurants. I ran restaurants. Believe it or not, I ran Chuck E. Cheese's out of here. I ran all the Chuck E. Cheese's for quite a while. Then I had my own kids and I kind of got sick of kids. So, at Chuck E. Cheese's, if I had to pay all those people, and our pizzas were expensive as heck to begin with, if I had to pay all those people $11 an hour or comparable at that time, you just couldn't survive. So if you're talking some incremental small change, I would be willing to look at it. The proposals I've seen, I would not. Yes, Beck. Wait for the microphone. Wait for the microphone.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've heard the arguments on minimum wage, and I don't think the lower end jobs, the entry level jobs, were meant to be anything more than, minimum wage. Because especially with all these kids here, what you want to do is you want to stay in school, move up the corporate ladder, just move up, get a good paying job. But again, if you don't have these minimum wage jobs, your hamburger's going to be $15, $20, loaf of bread's going to be $5. I mean, from the time we were kids, things have moved up. I started at $1.25 an hour was a base wage. That was a minimum wage. Things were cheaper back then. But, the minimum wage has to stay where it's at. Within a few pennies, a quarter, 50 cents might not hurt. But it was never meant to be that kind of a wage earning kind of thing. Just like Social Security isn't meant to be your retirement. I think there should be some kind of retirement built in also, too. Once you get into a regular job, instead of just paying Social Security, there should be like a 10% withdrawal from your paycheck into a 401k or something like that.
As a mandatory thing? Is that what?
Not as mandatory, but I think as an educational thing, that's something you want to get in and maybe through the corporate funding, something like that, to have a match, which they do now. But you want to look for something like that. But Social Security is going to go bankrupt also if they don't do something.
And the thing when you start increasing minimum wage by leaps and bounds, which is the proposals that have been out there, it affects more than just the minimum wage workers, because there's a lot of people, that are working at lower end salaries that all of a sudden they were making $3 or $4 more than minimum wage. All of a sudden they are making minimum wage. So do we have to increase them as well? It could be acceptable, but everybody's got to understand the price of everything is going to go up really fast, really fast. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry for speaking out.
Yeah, wait for the
But
microphone.
that's been the fear all these years, that the consumer is going to pay so much more so that these people can make a decent wage. How many people are living on 3 jobs making that $7 an hour? I think the thing they want to do is raise the minimum wage so that you have a decent wage, to try to get these people off of welfare.
Well, I think
and
the
other
point,
programs.
I think the point which was
the minimum wage would help to eliminate that.
Yeah, I think what the point what was made is there are certain jobs that are minimum wage jobs that are meant to be starter jobs for teens and stuff like that. If we have people that are working at minimum wage jobs trying to support a family, our economy will be in a lot of trouble. We have a question up here, Jen. And we're going to have to wrap it up here in a few minutes as well. So if anybody else has any questions, get your hands up and we'll get to you. Yes,
Hi,
Jim.
thank you. I just wanted to ask a question on the matters of education, since there's a lot of high school students
waiting
in the
for
room.
one.
As you know, especially in this district, Penn Trafford, Norwin, it's very highly populated, especially with the new housing plans and such. Where do you stand on increasing the education budget, and how do you plan on, if you agree with that, going further with it?
Yeah, thank you, because I was waiting on education. Actually, I had a chart there for on education funding if we had a question on it. First off, right now there's more state dollars going to the basic education funding formula than ever before in the history of state. So there is more dollars going there. The problem is, what's the dollars being used for? Like I said earlier, the pensions. The pensions are eating up more and more of the local dollars as well as at the state level. I think we're investing less in classrooms than we were. We've already had discussions with the appropriations chair in the governor's office. We are really hopeful that we can continue to increase education funding. There's been minimal, infinitesimal, small increases in the last couple years. Not enough to really make any noticeable changes in your lives at school. I'm a big fan of early childhood education. That's my opinion. I know not everybody shares that opinion, but that's my opinion. I've read studies that if you have nursery school and stuff like that, that the benefits from that by the time you get to third grade are no longer there. I don't believe it. That's just me, but that's my opinion. I really believe that we need to invest more in early childhood education, the Keystone Stars program, accountability block grants, which you may have heard about. Accountability block grants were for kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, things like that. Those are issues that I support. I believe we will see more money for education in the next budget cycle. I truly believe it. Once it's there, it almost stays there because there's a hold harmless clause in Pennsylvania that whatever a school district got in the prior year, it has to get at least that going forward. So once it's established, it's actually part of it will be a ongoing thing. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Yes?
Nope. No, I should have stayed up here. Okay, this kind of goes along with the education thing. Just like I know all of us are looking into colleges, and like they say stay in school, but we've done with my parents like all of the aid and everything through the government and everything, and we basically get nothing. But schools are very expensive, $50,000-$60,000 a year. Yeah. How am I supposed to stay in school if I can't afford to stay in school?
And I've got nothing squared for my first two kids, so I mean, it's part of the issue always has been is we have a lot of kids going to college that maybe should be finding alternatives other than college. There's legislation out there to encourage workforce development in the fields that need developed. We have a complete lack of machinists, things like, but people think that okay, well, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I'll be a machinist. Guess what? If you don't know math, you can't be a machinist. If you don't know math, there's very few jobs you could actually do. The less kids, if we make college a more selective thing and start getting kids into the right areas, there'll be more money available for students that are going to college to become students, because we have X amount of dollars that we put aside through FIA and grants and things like that that just get eaten up. And a lot of your parents, not your parents, hopefully not your parents, but a lot of parents go through where they send their kids off to college and those kids go for a year or two and decide, I'm not going to do this. But guess what? They still got the bills to pay. They still got the student debt that they have to pay even if they don't finish. And that's a scary proposition. I knock on wood. First kid, 4 years done. Second kid, 4.5 years done. They both got jobs. They both do very well. I'm very proud of them both. Hopefully you guys all find that success too. But it's hard. It's hard. How old are you? 16, 17? 17. Do you know what you want to be? Yeah. Really? Yeah. What do you want to be?
I want to be an anesthesiologist.
An anesthesiologist. doctor anesthesiologist or a nurse anesthetist? Okay, that's good because we passed laws that said nurse anesthetists can't do it without a doctor standing beside them. So, well, that's good. But you got a heck of a long haul in front of you, and you do have a lot of money, and you will have lots of bills. I know that the state systems. You do get some money through FIA. You can't get grants as you move along. I would suggest anybody scour the internet for the different grants or scholarships that are out there, or learn how to dribble with your left hand at an early age, and maybe you'd be a good basketball player. It's very difficult. It really is. And I know for my kids, my commitment to them is I'll take on the debt. I'll pay it. I'll do what I can to, but you have to commit to me that you're going to get this done. And thus far it's worked for me, but I wish you luck. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And we at Pennsylvania, we do fund colleges. We do fund our state system schools, the Slippery Rocks, the Edinburghs, IUPs, but those aren't money going to the students. That's going to the schools themselves. Now, the idea would be is hopefully they would use that money to keep tuition low. That hasn't happened in the 3 years I've been there. Tuition has increased every year, no matter what. So we need to be a little bit more efficient on what we're doing there. And I've always suggested instead of keep shoveling more money towards the state system schools, put more money into FIA where it gets to the kids that really need it. So, all right, we're gonna have time for like one more question. So, good Lauren.
Hi, thank you. Hi. This relates a little bit to what they were talking about, the guns and the students' safety in school. Not only do I think that's important, but how about identifying and helping those that have the mental illness?
Yes.
And I don't know what parents would feel or how other students would feel, but if they were I would want my teachers to know, my son's teachers to know if he had a learning disability or allergies or a medical condition.
Yeah. And
I don't know how parents or students would feel about being tested in some manner for a psychological disorder or something before they entered middle school or high school or something, just so they're identified. I think you go to the root before it gets to the gun issue, maybe.
And I agree with you 100%. And I know Congressman Murphy, I believe it was today, introduced legislation to that effect at the federal level. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I think it was either yesterday or today that he introduced legislation dealing specifically with what you're talking about. So I'll have to read it and get back to you on exactly what it entails. I have her email.
Oh, never mind.
So. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up, but hey, really, I appreciate everybody coming out. I hope for those students that are here that it was a learning experience for you, and for those that are home watching on the internet that maybe you learned something in regards to what happens at the state government. For everybody else, I really appreciate you being here and asking your questions. Understand there's cookies and stuff in the back. Help yourself take some home. But understand, if you have any questions, I don't care if you're not old enough to vote. If you have questions about something about the state, feel free to call my office and ask a question, email me. My business cards are back there. Well, again, everybody, thanks so much. Have a great holiday.